Today, I'd like us to talk about the Sabbath. I'd like us to visit Mark chapter 2, verse 23 to 28. Christ and his disciples were passing through the grain field on the Sabbath, and his disciples started plucking heads of grain. The Pharisees, noticing this, were so violent and they were judgmental, and they started asking, "Why are your disciples plucking heads of grain on the Sabbath?" The Sabbath day was a day reserved for God, and it was a day reserved strictly for rest.
Created April 17, 2020, we are an assembly of Christians and without a care of our different denominations came together with the sole purpose of rebuilding our world by word of scripture. We are the Our World Group.
And to them, seeing these very disciples plucking heads of grain was not what was demanded of the Sabbath, and they started arguing. But I want you to understand here that these very Pharisees were not actually having concern for the Sabbath as a day of rest and a day for God. They actually wanted just to criticize. They were just being judgmental. And for them to be focused only on these heads of grain that were being plucked by the disciples makes you to see that they were actually looking for what to criticize Jesus with. They were looking for an error. They were looking for anything that they could criticize Jesus with. And they had to pick this out because the disciples did this on the Sabbath. The Sabbath day is a day of rest. We should keep the Sabbath day holy. It is a day for us to reserve strictly in worshiping God and in resting. Now, when you follow this very passage critically, I want you to pick out something, please. We should, as Christians, respect the Sabbath. We should make it holy. But we should understand that Christ is the Lord of the Sabbath. He was with the disciples. Jesus passed this very message to them. And he indicated that the Sabbath was meant for man and not man for the Sabbath. This is very clear. I want you to understand that these people, the disciples picking heads of grain, it may be because they were hungry. You cannot cheat nature. You can arrive at a point that you are actually hungry and you need food. Christ makes it very clear here. We should have feelings for human beings. The Pharisees never had feelings for these very disciples that were plucking heads of grain. Maybe they were hungry and they needed to feed themselves. They decided to do this. I'm trying to stress for you to understand that the reason why Christ made it very clear that the Sabbath was meant for man and not man for the Sabbath, and also the fact that the Son of God is the Lord of the Sabbath, is to make it very clear for you to understand that if, like the Pharisees, we keep it lawful, then we should also understand about human need. We should also bear in mind that the human system should be kept healthy. But the problem here is that the Pharisees were not actually talking about keeping the Sabbath holy. They were just out to judge. They were just out to criticize. That was their focus. So we should bear in mind that the Sabbath should be kept holy. It is a day of rest. We should keep it holy as Christians.